My friend, today I want to talk to you about something that affects every single one of us. No matter who you are, where you come from, or what you have been through, life will always present obstacles. There will always be challenges, roadblocks, and moments when you feel like giving up. But I want to encourage you today, God did not create you to be defeated. He did not put a dream in your heart just to watch it fade away. He made you to be unstoppable. He created you to overcome, to press forward, and to step into the purpose He has designed for you. The enemy will try to discourage you. People will doubt you. Even your own fears will whisper that you are not strong enough. But hear me, when you align yourself with God's will, when you stand firm in faith, and when you refuse to give up, nothing can stop you from reaching the destiny He has prepared for you. Today, we are going to talk about how to overcome any obstacle and achieve your dreams. Not by your strength alone, but by walking in the power, wisdom, and favor of Almighty God. Faith is not just believing in God when things are going well. Faith is trusting Him when nothing seems to make sense, when the door you were knocking on refuses to open, when the storm doesn't pass as quickly as you had hoped. It is standing firm in the midst of the fire. It does not shrink back when adversity comes. It presses on, believing that God's promises will come to pass no matter how impossible the situation may look. This kind of faith is what separates those who give up from those who walk in the fullness of God's plan for their lives. Look at the life of Abraham. God promised him a son, yet years passed and nothing seemed to happen. He and Sarah were old and the promise seemed further away than ever. But Abraham chose to believe God. He chose to trust that what God said would come to pass, even when everything in the natural world said otherwise. The Bible tells us that Abraham's faith was counted to him as righteousness because he did not waver in unbelief. That is relentless faith. That is the kind of faith that takes hold of a promise and refuses to let go until it becomes reality. The enemy will always try to attack your faith. He will whisper lies that make you doubt what God has spoken over your life. He will remind you of past failures, disappointments, and rejections. He will try to make you believe that you are not worthy, that you are not strong enough, that you do not have what it takes. But listen to me, your faith is your weapon. It is the very thing that will carry you through the darkest nights and the longest battles. It is what will give you the endurance to keep moving forward when everything inside of you wants to quit. Think about the story of David. When he stood before Goliath, there was no logical reason for him to win that fight. He was a shepherd boy, not a warrior. He had no armor, no experience, no weapons that could compare to the giants. But David had something far greater, faith in a God who had never failed him before. He remembered how God had delivered him from the lion and the bear. And he knew that the same God who had been faithful then would be faithful now. That faith propelled him forward. That faith gave him the confidence to stand against an enemy that everyone else was afraid of. And because of his faith, he saw victory. The same is true for you. You may be facing a giant in your life right now. It may be a financial struggle, a difficult relationship, a sickness, a dream that seems out of reach. But if you hold on to faith, if you refuse to be moved by what you see and instead stand on what you know to be true about God, then you will overcome. You will see his faithfulness. You will experience his power working on your behalf. Faith is not just about believing that God exists. It is about trusting that he is who he says he is, that he will do what he said he will do. It is about believing that he is a provider when you are in need, a healer when you are sick, a waymaker when you are lost. And here is the key. Faith requires action. It is not enough to say you believe. You must live as if you believe. That means stepping out when God calls you, even if you are afraid. It means praying when you don't see results. It means praising him before the victory comes. So often we want to see the evidence before we trust God. We want the breakthrough before we take the first step. But that is not how faith works. Faith moves first. Faith acts before there is proof. Faith says, I may not see it yet, but I know my God is working. I may not understand it now, but I trust that his plan is better than mine. I may feel weak, but I know that his strength is made perfect in my weakness. God honors relentless faith. He rewards those who diligently seek him. When you stand firm in faith, when you refuse to be shaken by circumstances, when you declare that no matter what comes, you will trust in the Lord with all your heart, then nothing can stop you. No enemy, no hardship, no delay can keep you from what God has destined for you. Faith unlocks doors that no man can shut. It tears down walls that seem insurmountable. It makes a way where there is no way. God is looking for men and women who will stand in faith no matter what, who will believe even when everything seems impossible, who will refuse to be discouraged by delays or setbacks, who will keep their eyes on him instead of the obstacles in front of them. Because when you have relentless faith, when you refuse to give up, you become unstoppable. Nothing can hold you back from achieving the dreams God has placed inside of you. The question is, will you trust him enough to step out in faith no matter what stands in your way? Trusting God's timing, even when it seems delayed, is one of the greatest challenges in our walk of faith, because we live in a world that expects instant results. We are used to things happening quickly, and when they don't, doubt begins to creep in. We start questioning whether God has forgotten about us, whether he has heard our prayers, whether he still cares. But the truth is, God's timing is always perfect. He sees the full picture, the beginning and the end, and he knows exactly when the right moment is for his plan to unfold in your life. When things seem delayed, it does not mean God is denying you the blessing. It does not mean he has abandoned you. It simply means he is preparing you for what he has already set aside for you. There is something he is working on, something he is aligning, something he is teaching you in the waiting season. Think about Joseph in the Bible. He had a dream at a young age that God would elevate him, that he would one day be in a position of great authority. But instead of stepping into that promise immediately, Joseph faced years of hardship. He was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. Everything in his life seemed to move in the opposite direction of what God had promised him. If anyone had a reason to doubt God's timing, it was Joseph. But what Joseph did not realize in those moments of waiting and suffering was that God was preparing him. The trials he faced were developing his character, his wisdom, his dependence on God. Every setback was actually a step forward in God's divine plan. And when the time was right, when Joseph had been fully prepared for the responsibility God had for him, he was elevated to a position of power that no man could take away. If Joseph had received the promise too soon, he would not have been ready for it. He had to go through the process, endure the waiting, and trust that God's plan was still in motion even when it seemed delayed. Waiting is not easy. It can be frustrating, discouraging, and even painful. But God does not waste our waiting seasons. Every moment of waiting is an opportunity for growth, for refining, for strengthening our faith. When we rush ahead of God, when we try to force things to happen in our own strength, we often end up causing more harm than good. We see this with Abraham and Sarah. God had promised them a son, but when years passed without any sign of fulfillment, they decided to take matters into their own hands. Sarah gave her servant Hagar to Abraham, and Ishmael was born. But that was not God's plan, and because they stepped ahead of his timing, it created conflict and pain that could have been avoided. God's promise to them had never changed. He still brought Isaac at the appointed time, proving once again that his word never fails. But if they had just trusted his timing from the beginning, they would have been spared the unnecessary heartache of trying to do things their own way. When God asks us to wait, he is not punishing us. He is protecting us. He knows what lies ahead. He knows what we are ready for and what we are not. He knows the dangers, the challenges, the lessons we still need to learn before stepping into our destiny. When we trust his timing, we are saying, Lord, I may not understand, but I know you do. I may not see the full picture, but I trust that you are working behind the scenes. I may feel like things are developing. The mindset of a conqueror begins with understanding that victory is not just about external success, but about the way you think, believe, and respond to challenges. A conqueror does not see obstacles as roadblocks, but as opportunities for growth. A conqueror does not back down in the face of adversity, but presses forward with unwavering determination. The battles of life are not just physical, but mental and spiritual. The enemy's greatest strategy is to make you believe that you are not capable, that you are not strong enough, that you will never overcome. But the truth is, God has already given you everything you need to be victorious. It is not about what you feel, but about what you know. It is not about what you see, but about what you believe. A conqueror does not rely on emotions to determine their actions. They rely on faith, on discipline, on the unshakable belief that nothing is impossible with God. Obstacles force you to grow in ways that comfort never will. If everything came easily, there would be no reason to develop perseverance, wisdom, or resilience. When you face resistance, you learn to lean on God in ways you never would have otherwise. You develop a deeper level of faith, a greater sense of trust, and a stronger character. The challenges refine you, revealing what is truly inside of you. Gold is purified in fire, and faith is strengthened through trials. The very thing you think is holding you back may actually be the thing God is using to push you forward. When the Israelites stood before the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army behind them, it looked like an impossible situation. But what they saw as an obstacle was actually an opportunity for God to perform a miracle. The sea that seemed to block their path was the very thing that God used to demonstrate his power. When they stepped forward in obedience, the waters parted and they walked through on dry ground. The obstacle became the testimony. The thing that seemed like a dead end became the proof of God's faithfulness. In the same way, the obstacles in your life are not meant to stop you, but to reveal the power of God at work within you. Paul faced constant opposition in his ministry, imprisonment, beatings, shipwrecks, persecution, yet he never allowed those obstacles to stop him. Instead, he saw them as opportunities to spread the gospel, to encourage others, to prove that nothing could separate him from the love of Christ. He understood that the very things meant to harm him were the things that God was using to advance his kingdom. That is the mindset of someone who sees obstacles as stepping stones. Refuse to be discouraged by difficulty. Refusing to let fear dictate your future begins with recognizing that fear is one of the enemy's greatest weapons. It is designed to paralyze, to control, and to keep you from stepping into the fullness of God's plan for your life. Fear whispers lies that make you doubt your ability, question your worth, and second guess the promises of God. It magnifies problems, exaggerates risk, and keeps you focused on everything that could go wrong. But fear is not from God. Scripture tells us that he has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. When the Israelites stood at the edge of the promised land, they sent 12 spies to survey the territory. 10 of them returned filled with fear, saying the land was inhabited by giants too powerful to defeat. Their fear spread among the people, and as a result, an entire generation missed out on God's promise. Only Joshua and Caleb stood firm in faith, declaring that if God had given them the land, then no enemy could stop them. The difference was not in what they saw, but in how they responded. The 10 spies allowed fear to dictate their future, while Joshua and Caleb refused to let fear define their destiny. David understood the danger of fear when he faced Goliath. The entire Israelite army was frozen in fear, unwilling to step forward because the giant seemed too strong. But David saw things differently. He refused to let fear determine his actions. He did not deny that Goliath was big, that the challenge was real, or that the battle would be difficult. But he knew something greater. God was with him. And because of that, he ran toward the battle instead of away from it. This is the difference between those who walk in fear and those who walk in faith. Fear makes you retreat, but faith makes you advance. Fear makes you see obstacles as impossible, but faith makes you see them as opportunities for God to move. Fear magnifies the enemy, but fear often disguises itself as wisdom. It tells you to be cautious, to wait until you feel ready, to avoid risk. But faith does not wait for perfect conditions. If Peter had waited until he fully understood how to walk on water, he never would have stepped out of the boat. Fear says, what if I fail? But faith says, what if God comes through? Fear focuses on the worst case scenario, but faith focuses on the promises of God. Every time you step out in faith, you weaken fear's grip on your life, but every time you give in to fear, you make it stronger. One of the greatest ways to defeat fear is through obedience. When God calls you to something, he does not ask if you feel ready. He simply asks you to trust him. When he told Moses to confront Pharaoh, Moses was afraid. He had excuses, doubts, insecurities. But God did not accept his fear as an excuse. He simply said, I will be with you. Strengthening your daily walk with God for endurance begins with understanding that endurance is not built in a moment, but over time. Just as an athlete does not develop strength overnight, spiritual endurance is cultivated through daily habits, consistent faith, and an unwavering commitment to seek God no matter what circumstances arise. Life will bring challenges, unexpected trials, and seasons of difficulty. But those who walk closely with God will not be shaken. Prayer is the lifeline of endurance. It is not just a routine, but a relationship, a direct connection to the one who holds all things together. When you make prayer a daily priority, you cultivate a spirit that is sensitive to God's voice, allowing him to guide your steps and strengthen your heart. Prayer is where burdens are exchanged for peace, where weakness is met with divine strength, where fear is replaced with faith. Those who endure do not rely on their own understanding, but lean on God through constant communication. The more you pray, the more aware you become of his presence, and the more confident you are that he is working, even when you cannot see it. Obedience plays a crucial role in strengthening your walk with God. Many people want endurance, but they struggle with consistency in following God's instructions. Obedience is not just about doing what is convenient, but about trusting that God's way is always best, even when it does not make sense. When you obey his word, you build a habit of faithfulness that reinforces your endurance. Small acts of obedience create a lifestyle of strength, and over time, they prepare you for greater challenges. If you cannot be faithful in the small things, it will be difficult to stand firm in bigger battles. Walking closely with God means surrendering your will daily and choosing to trust him completely. Surrounding yourself with the right people for success begins with understanding that the company you keep has a direct impact on the direction of your life. The people you allow into your inner circle will either propel you forward or hold you back. They will either strengthen your faith or weaken it, encourage your dreams or discourage them, push you toward excellence or pull you into mediocrity. Relationships are not neutral. They always influence you in some way. This is why Scripture warns that bad company corrupts good character. If you want to succeed, if you want to overcome obstacles and fulfill the purpose God has placed on your life, you must be intentional about the people you surround yourself with. When David was anointed to be king, he did not step up into his destiny alone. God placed people around him who strengthened him in times of difficulty. Jonathan, the son of Saul, became a source of encouragement, reminding David of God's promises when opposition arose. When David was on the run from Saul, not just his own strength that sustained him, but also the loyalty of the mighty men who stood by his side. These were men of courage, faith, and dedication, people who believed in David's calling and fought alongside him. David surrounded himself with people who doubted him, who discouraged him, or who led him away from God's will. His story might have been different. Jesus himself demonstrated the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people. Though he ministered to many, he was intentional about his closest relationships. He chose 12 disciples to walk with him, but even among them, he had an inner circle, Peter, James, and John, who witnessed his most intimate moments of revelation and strength. Jesus did not allow just anyone into the places of deep prayer or divine encounters. He understood that not everyone is meant to be in your inner circle. Some people cannot handle your vision, your calling, or the level of faith required to walk in obedience to God. There were times when Jesus had to remove doubters before performing miracles because unbelief can hinder the move of God. If Jesus was intentional about the people closest to him, how much more should you be? The right people will challenge you to grow, to step out in faith, and to pursue God's best for your life. They will not let you settle for less than what you were created for. They will call out the greatness in you when you feel weak and remind you of your purpose when you are tempted to quit. They will correct you in love when you are off course and celebrate with you when you succeed. The wrong people, however, will drain your energy, fill your mind with doubt, and keep you entangled in distractions. Your environment shapes your mindset, and your mindset determines your actions. If you spend time with people who complain, who make excuses, who always focus on what is wrong, you will begin to adopt that mentality. But if you surround yourself with people who are full of faith, who speak life, who take action despite obstacles, you will be inspired to do the same. The right people will remind you that nothing is impossible with God. They will pray with you, believe with you, and stand with you when challenges arise. When you feel like giving up, they will remind you why you started. As you stand on the path toward your destiny, remember this. Nothing can stop you when you place your trust in God. Refuse to let fear dictate your steps and persevere with unwavering faith. Every obstacle is an opportunity. Every challenge is a stepping stone. And every setback is a setup for something greater. The road will not always be easy. But success is not for those who shrink back. It is for those who press on, who believe even when the odds are against them, and who refuse to quit when the journey gets tough. You were not created to live in defeat. You were not designed to be overwhelmed by fear, doubt, or adversity. You were made to rise, to conquer, to walk boldly in the purpose God has set before you. The dreams placed in your heart are not there by accident. They are divine assignments waiting to be fulfilled. But dreams do not come to pass through mere desire. They come through action, persistence, and unshakable confidence that with God, all things are possible. No matter what stands in your way, you have everything you need to overcome. When opposition rises, stand firm. When fear whispers lies, silence it with truth. When the journey feels long, press forward with endurance. Surround yourself with the right people. Lean into God's strength and never lose sight of the vision He has placed within you. Obstacles are not there to stop you. They are there to prepare you. to shape you, to build the resilience and character needed for the next level. So rise up, move forward, keep believing, keep fighting, keep trusting. You are unstoppable, not because of your own strength, but because the God who called you is faithful. No barrier is too great, no challenge too strong, no dream too impossible. You were created to achieve, to overcome, and to fulfill the purpose for which you were made. The only question is, will you keep going? Will you refuse to quit? Will you dare to believe that nothing can stand in the way of what God has planned for your life? If your answer is yes, then no obstacle will ever be able to stop you.